Thanks everybody for joining us. I think we're going to have a good discussion today talking about all things AI and security and compliance and kind of the wave of the future, if you will. There's probably some folks out there that are very unsure of this whole AI thing. There's others that are completely embracing it, and there's probably some other folks that sit in between. We're going to talk about kind of the lay of the land and some important considerations from a security and compliance perspective as it relates to AI, and not only generative AI, which is, I think, what everybody kind of associates with AI today, but really all types of AI that's been around for years. So a couple of housekeeping items. Feel free to throw comments or questions in the Q&A box. We will perhaps answer those depending on the question and the content that's being discussed in real time. If not, then we will work to get through all the questions at the end, but please do not hesitate to throw those questions out there. By way of introductions, my name is Ryan Patrick. I'm the Vice President of Adoption here at HITRUST. Been with HITRUST just over 3 years. Prior to that, worked for a number of different professional services firms doing HITRUST work, everything from pen testing to risk assessments, tabletop exercises, you name it. I probably have dabbled in it to a certain extent. Beyond that, I have a military background, was an active duty Army officer, served just about 20 years in the United States Army, doing super cool things like rolling around on tanks and feeling cool, to just being a normal IT and security guy over the course of my career. So with that, I will pass it over to Lanice.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Lanice Wilson, and I'm thrilled to be here today. I've spent about 20 years in GRC, helping organizations navigate security challenges and stay ahead of ever-evolving regulations. At Coalfire, I lead GRC strategies for our enterprise clients, helping them assess risk, implement controls, and build resilient security programs. And because technology isn't slowing down, I am also pursuing a PhD researching how AI automation and regulatory frameworks can work together to scale compliance services effectively. Today, I'll be diving into AI security strategy and what's changing, what risks we need to anticipate, and how your organization can align AI security with regulatory frameworks. But before I do any of that, I'll hand it over to my colleague, Joe McDermott.
Hello, everyone. My name is Joe McDermott. I'm a senior manager on the Coalfire healthcare team. I work almost exclusively on high trust assessments. I've been focusing on helping companies get high trust certified, going on 10 years now, all the way back to 2015. I've worked with a number of cloud providers and hospital systems. I've seen the different CSF versions over the years and whatnot. So what I've came out with is the key to success is keeping things simple. Yeah, I kept it a little lighthearted here. I said the simplifier of high trust. I think whether you're getting through an R2 assessment or one of the newer E1s or I1s, we'll talk about the AI certification here today. Keeping it simple, making sure everything is straightforward and understood is kind of the key to success. So I'll be here to talk about how these certifications actually look in practice. What is it looking like in the MyCSF? How does it lay against actual high trust certifications themselves? And yeah, excited to be here.
So fun fact, I've known Joe for, 3 years or so, and I just found out about an hour ago that he's been following me around the country.
Yeah, that's right.
And we both play hockey. So small world. The hockey world is a small one. I'm sure, potentially we've played against each other, but who knows? All right, I digress. All right, so we're going to hear the session objectives. I've already kind of talked about some of this. We're going to dive into, understanding where AI is today, right? We have to set some context, understand what the adoption rates are, what the regulatory and compliance landscape looks like. Then we're going to get into, types of AI risks. Then we'll talk about probably in more specifics, the different options you have from an AI security assessment perspective, whether it be hardcore security controls or more around the governance and risk management aspect of AI. And then we may throw some, funny stories in there. Again, maybe some interpretive dances. I don't know. We'll see.
There you go.
But as I mentioned, I wanted to set the tone. If you look at this graph, this is from a survey conducted by McKinsey and Company. From 2023 to 2024, the adoption of AI spiked to certain extents. And for anybody who's been paying attention, that is because in the 2023 timeframe is where generative AI became somewhat of a real thing. It was publicly available to the market via things like ChatGPT and other types of tools. And what I think is really interesting about this graph is if you look in 2024, it says 72% of respondents globally have adopted AI in at least one business function, which that may be alarming, that may be surprising, but I would argue that it's possibly even higher than that. If you think about how Microsoft has built Copilot into just about every one of their products, and Google has Gemini, and all these other tools. Adobe has a bunch of AI built into their products and such. That adoption rate is probably a lot higher. People just may not know about it. And I talk to CISOs and TPRM managers almost on a daily basis, and they're trying to wrestle with this idea of, well, I don't think I have any AI because I really haven't been asking questions about it. But when I start to look under the hood, I realize more and more of my vendors have built AI into the products or services that I'm already consuming from them, and I didn't even know. So it's a really compelling concept when you look at the people who have raised their hand and said, yeah, we've adopted AI versus the aspect of how much AI is actually out there. And I want to bring your attention to some more statistics within this survey. The respondents were asked, what are some risks, if you will, that are important to you, and inaccuracy of the AI and IP infringement were the ones that actually went up from 2023 to 2024 versus all of the other ones kind of went down. And I think that's because more and more people are starting to realize the capability of AI. And then they're like, holy moly, almost said something a little out of turn.
Holy moly.
The Army almost came out of me. My sensitive information, my employees may be sticking this into ChatGPT or some other type of tool. And that's a big problem for me. So it really gets you thinking about, where do we go from here? What do we need to do to understand what we need to be doing to address the advent and the adoption of AI? And if you think about the threat landscape, I would argue that it's probably not going to be much different than the current threat landscape with traditional types of security or traditional types of tools. The names and the avenues may be a little bit different, but the concepts are going to be arguably the same. But the problem is that we haven't even wrapped our head around how do you understand the inherent risk of AI for your business partners or even internally. Like, what matters? What drives an AI tool to go from low risk, low inherent risk to high to critical? And I think we're starting to figure that stuff out collectively, but there's still a ton of work that needs to be done. And I want to point out that we've seen more regulation or talk about regulation. There's some stuff happening in Europe with the EU AI Act and some other types of acts that are starting to, put some meat on the bone from a regulatory perspective. And you see things like ISO 42001, and there's some stuff that came out from NIST, but there really isn't a standard, if you will. There's no bar right now for generally accepted AI security practices. And we really haven't figured out how do we ascertain what's happening from a threat perspective. Because for me, as a security guy, now talking head, threat is most important in my mind in protecting organizations. That's how you get from compliance to security, is actually focusing on what matters and not just satisfying some standard regulation or framework. And we don't have a ton of information, at least not that I've seen, around what are the exploits happening right now with AI. And there's some stuff, but I don't think it's as mature as we have in the traditional security sense. And I think that's really, really important. And we really need to figure out and use the concepts that we've learned in the past, right? If you think about the SDLC, the software lifecycle development, there was a lot of pain 15, 20 years ago around people just building software and not considering security and then having to play catch up. And what they weren't doing was thinking about building security into the design of the software at the time. And we learned some pretty hard lessons. And we really need to think about that from a AI perspective and learn from that hard lesson, that it's really cool to build some kind of model that is going to change the world. But if we have not built in controls to protect against, already identified and already known security controls or, security considerations, then we're going to play catch up. And those relevant risks that I mentioned a few slides ago around, inaccuracy, by the way, or IP infringement, or any of the other types of risks, we're going to have to play catch up again. So why don't we start to learn from the mistakes of our past and focus on AI security as we're developing it, build it into the design from the start, make sure we're testing it, make sure we're doing some kind of threat modeling. And as more regulation comes out, or as there's more standards that are developed, like the stuff that HITRUST is doing, we keep that in mind as we're developing things. So I'm going to pause, take a breath, drink some coffee, and I'm going to pass it over to Lenice.
Thanks, Ryan. Just to kind of parrot what you're saying, right? AI is definitely revolutionizing industries, and it's bringing us efficiencies that we really couldn't have imagined a decade ago, right? But as AI adoption skyrockets, the security and the compliance challenges are skyrocketing right alongside with them, right? We're dealing with risks that are evolving in real time. And so the goal of kind of my thoughts in this discussion is really not to overcomplicate AI security, but to help create an understanding of how we can integrate with AI while still maintaining a strong security posture, having clear governance and regulatory alignment. So we're going to walk through what's happening in AI, the risks today, the key components of a structured AI security strategy, and then kind of what you can do to stay ahead of these kinds of challenges. So AI security threats are not just theoretical anymore, they're happening, right? So we're seeing AI-driven phishing attacks that are almost indistinguishable from real communications, and malware that adapts in real time. The sorry, jumped around here. Unauthorized AI usage is also becoming a huge risk, right? We're seeing studies that are showing while only a small percentage of businesses are officially reporting AI use, employees across industries are leveraging unapproved AI tools at what feels like an alarming rate to me, right? So, adding to that challenge, the regulatory landscapes are evolving at an unprecedented pace, right? Especially for companies that are involved in developing and deploying AI systems. You've got dozens of countries out there that are introducing AI specific policies that are creating what feels like a web of compliance requirements that we've all got to suddenly navigate, right? So, using the high trust approach to AI security and risk, it's going to focus on three key areas, right? We're going to define clear governance. We're going to integrate security best practices from other leading frameworks, And then we're going to ensure that there's continuous risk monitoring. So each of these areas is going to help to establish a structured and proactive approach to AI security rather than just kind of scrambling to react to emerging threats. So one of the biggest gaps that I've seen in AI security is not technology, right? Technology is out there, it is governance. A lot of organizations are adopting AI without clearly defining who's responsible for security, who's responsible for compliance, and even things like who's responsible for ethical considerations, right? And without that oversight, AI tools can introduce a lot of new types of risks that go kind of completely unnoticed until they create a big problem. So, a strong governance model means that we've got to do more than just assigning responsibility. We want to make sure that our risk is known, we want to make sure that it's monitored and managed as a part of our overall security strategy. So, that starts with establishing governance teams that include your compliance, your security, your legal leaders, and not just your IT folks, right? It means setting up regular audits to assess AI usage, especially when your employees might be introducing tools that haven't gone through proper vetting, which is reasonably common. And I'm thinking that organizations that take the time to define the ownership and the accountability early on are going to have a much easier time keeping AI security risks under control in the long run. So, AI security is not a standalone effort. It builds on already well established security and risk management principles. And rather than creating AI specific controls from scratch, we know that HITRUST integrates industry frameworks, using them as authoritative sources to help ensure it's a more comprehensive approach to AI risk management so that it's not operating in a vacuum, right? Instead, it's pulling from these globally recognized standards so that we can help ensure alignment with the latest best practices and regulatory expectations and risk management methods. So it's going to serve as a foundation for your AI security controls while incorporating requirements from standards like your ISO AI management system standard and your NIST AI risk management framework, right? So AI is constantly evolving. Your models update, your data inputs change, and risks that are associated with those things can emerge over time. So that's why continuous monitoring is critical. We really need to actively track AI behavior, looking for unexpected shifts that could indicate vulnerabilities, compliance violations, or ethical concerns. So this means incorporating AI specific risk assessments into security processes rather than treating your AI as an outlier. And by embedding that AI risk monitoring into an overall compliance strategy, we can try to ensure that we're catching these issues before they become full-blown security incidents. So one of the key aspects of this risk assessment is the risk management controls that are designed to bring structure and accountability to AI security. They don't reinvent the wheel here, but they're building on to best practices to create that comprehensive framework. So a major focus is on governance. Again, one of the biggest gaps in AI security today isn't technology, it's oversight. Many organizations are deploying AI without clearly defining roles and responsibilities for managing its risk. And without structured governance, it's easy for AI to introduce security gaps that no one's formally responsible for addressing. So this AI risk management is going to help establish accountability, making sure the AI systems are properly monitored and managed. Then you've got risk assessment. That's another critical area. AI introduces some unique risks like bias and unintended model behaviors that traditional security assessments might not fully capture. So it's not just about ensuring your AI models work, but making sure they work reliably and securely, right? So having a structured assessment helps evaluate these potential threats, again, before they become major issues. So your data security also is going to play a massive role in AI risk management. Because AI systems are only as good as the data they process, if that data is compromised, if it's outdated or biased, the AI system can really quickly become a liability. And we need to ensure that our AI models handle data responsibly, they maintain privacy, and then, of course, they adhere to our security controls. So, the risk assessment, the AI risk assessment, is going to help to create these safeguards to prevent the unauthorized data access or misuse of data, right? And then beyond securing the data, there's also the challenge of ensuring the AI model itself is developed, is well developed, if you will, and it's functioning as intended. So our AI models need continuous testing and validation, not just during the development phase, but really throughout their life cycle, right? So, for instance, an AI model can drift. And as an example of that, imagine you've got an AI fraud detection system, right? That's trained on your historical financial transactions. Over time, your fraud tactics are going to evolve. Your cyber criminals are going to develop new strategies that weren't present in that training data. And then if your model isn't updated or monitored, right, it might fail to recognize emerging fraud patterns, making it far less effective and more prone to errors, right? So in that example, the drift causes the AI system to start making inaccurate predictions, which can have a major impact to an organization, right? So we really need a way to detect and address those changes before they create real world consequences, right? And finally, we know that AI security doesn't stop after deployment. We want to make sure that continuous monitoring is in there. It's essential, right? So AI models evolve as they interact with new data. And without proper oversight, they can start behaving unpredictably, right? So that's why having a structured monitoring and reporting process is so important. It gives us assurance that AI systems are remaining secure, compliant, and then aligned with our business objectives and risk management strategy. And at the end of the day, this assessment is about proactive AI risk management. It's not just about meeting compliance requirements, but about ensuring that your AI systems remain safe, ethical, and then aligned with our objectives. So if you take a structured approach now, I think your organization is going to be in a better place in the long run as regulations start to tighten around AI and as AI risks become even more complex. So to kind of summarize, right, AI security is not a one-time effort. It's requiring ongoing governance, risk assessments, compliance monitoring to really keep pace with the evolving threats and regulations. And then by implementing a proactive risk assessment, right, like the HITRUST AI risk assessment, defining that clear governance structure, ensuring continuous monitoring, we can start to reduce the AI security risks while at the same time maintaining compliance. And, we know that risk is not only, or we know that risk is actually just one piece of the puzzle, right? Certification is going to play another crucial role in demonstrating that your AI security, that you've got assurance in your AI security, right? To your stakeholders, to your regulators, and then probably most importantly to your customers. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to my colleague, Joe McDermott, who's going to be
That
taking
was
us
a
through AI.
perfect segue. My gosh, landing right on AI certification right at the end, being
All
able to
right.
demonstrate these things, that was beautiful. Um, I want to go back to something, Lenice, you said a bit ago. We heard from Ryan about the widespread adoption of AI, and the words you used were real world consequences. If we don't have security and compliance built into AI models, and they start to be used uh, widespread across the industry. I think something we haven't seen yet is the AI data breach. Their AI hasn't been in the news yet with anything major. Uh, and I would like to think that if the industry is proactive enough, if we get out there with risk management and build security into AI practices, then we'll be able to get ahead of that. And not let there be a major AI breach in the news sooner than later. I think, to your point, Lenise, the certification model, making sure different groups are building security into AI, is going to be super important, and it starts with providers. So HITRUST actually has a new certification called the AI Security Certification. This slide is all about it. It's brand new. And this is focused at first on the provider side, whether it be the cloud providers or if it's OpenAI or Microsoft with Copilot. HITRUST vision is that we take some of these core controls, including, like you said, the change management, access management, making sure there's filtering for data going in and out of AI agents. And actually, the one security control I found really interesting was part of the HITRUST AI cert says that for every AI agent or class of agents, there needs to be what's called a model card. And a model card will list out what is the AI's function, what's the data set that it's relying on, if there's machine learning or other things going on or other resources being used. And then, most importantly, what human is accountable? Who is responsible for making sure bad things don't happen, for making sure data doesn't get leaked, or there's no data breach, or no one's able to poison the prompts or poison the AI with bad data. So these model cards and having that accountability built in, that being part of the AI certification, I think is super important. And like we said, it starts with providers. It starts with having the actual AI service itself be provided in a secure and compliant way. Um, the AI security certification is one of the first in the industry to really touch on that. I grabbed a little screenshot here. This is actually what it looks like from the HITRUST MyCSF portal. And you see that little shield next to it. That means it's a certification. So, in order to get an AI security certification from HITRUST, you need to have a validated assessment. It could be E1 or it could be I1, could be R2. And then you can go ahead and add on a factor. You see the little checkbox there? That's what it looks like. And we'll go to the next slide here. When you add on that AI framework, you have your normal validated assessment, E1 or I1, and those controls, and those are scored separately. So whether you get certified or not on your validated, that'll be calculated by itself. Your AI control work won't impact that up or down. But if you're successful on the AI controls, you can have this certification added on that speaks specifically to these individual functions. They mention generative AI, predictive AI specifically, rule based. I see the RAG is where it's going out and answering questions using a language model. So a lot of these specifics can be captured in this AI certification, and an organization can kind of show to the world that, yay, we are managing these risks. We do have these controls in place. We are paying attention at this detailed level. I think that that's really valuable. I think being an early adopter, being a company or a group that is proactive and goes out and gets a certification or a compliance report like the AI security compliance report, it really shows their forward thinking about security and the use of AI across the business. I think it's a good thing. It's a security is a mentality, and when you're a forward thinker, I think early adopters, there's value in that. So we'll keep it going here. Yeah, HITRUST has an interesting model where if you're actually not using predictive AI specifically, you can take it out and the 44 requirements go down a little bit. So you're only testing what you're actually using. Um, I think it's interesting where just like the R2 scales up and down a little bit, the AI security certification similarly changes based on what you're using. Now, I think this will evolve over time, right? Like as threats come out and as we learn more about on the user side, security being more important, I think in the future, both providers and users will do this kind of security or this kind of certification. But for now, this is kind of touching everything that a provider would need. Let me keep it going here. HITRUST does have one other option other than the AI certification, and that's actually a risk management insights report. So there's 50 requirements that similarly can be added to a HITRUST assessment where you're then eligible for an insights report, which may be a good first step if you're not ready to go all the way and get the actual AI certification itself. I think, Lanice, you talked about the risk management framework and specifically this insights report. It aligns really well to other frameworks that are out there. I see NIST AI, I see ISO. I think there's several different ISO frameworks that are relevant here. So two options are AI security cert and then risk management insights report. Those are HITRUST two options for reporting to the world, hey, we are on top of AI security and AI compliance in a detailed way. We're moving right along here. A couple more details again about this is the screenshot kind of similarly. When you're in the actual HITRUST portal, the MyCSF, you have your E1 or you have your I1. This is what the actual checkbox looks like. You go on the factors page and you can check AI risk management and you see the little page icon there. That's what means that you'd be eligible for an insights report once you complete that assessment. I've run out of slides. I know we're kind of at the top of time here.
I think we have a few more minutes. Actually, I think we have a bunch of more minutes, which is not a problem. But we do have some questions that came in. I want to add a little commentary,
Please.
though. So if you think about the two assessments that HITRUST has, Joe and Lenny's broken down. You have the AI security assessment, which is certifiable, and that's for AI providers, developers, implementers, right? So you think about the folks that are actually building the models, training the models, deploying the models, not the end users of the actual model itself. Then we have the AI risk management assessments that can generate an insight report, and that's really around exactly what it sounds like, the governance and risk management of AI tools in your environment. So think about the AI risk management assessment being more focused on the consumers of AI versus the developers, the providers, the implementers of AI. So there's tools in the toolkit, no matter what side of the coin you're sitting on, whether you're actually developing some kind of model or tool or consuming it, there's an option for both constituents, if you will. And what I want to point out is the risk management piece is going to be built off of, how are you governing and how are you looking at the AI that you have inside your environment across the board? Do you have policies and procedures that are governing them? Or do you have processes built in to assess, the security control, effectiveness, maturity, and scalability, so on and so forth? Do you have SLAs with your vendors? Like, there's lots of different, more, I don't want to say administrative because they're not solely administrative, but much more high level process based controls in that risk management assessment that is beneficial for organizations to take a look at on how they're actually managing the risks of these AI systems within their environment. And as Joe and Lindy's pointed out, those controls were built off of a combination of consuming ISO 28394. I always get that number messed up. And the NIST AI RMF. So it's not just HITRUST building something in a vacuum. It's based off of other standards that we obviously made a little bit our own and kind of picked out what we thought was really, really important for AI consumers, if you will. The insight report is actually the output of the assessment. The assessment itself you can do in a non-validated way. So it's basically a self-assessment, if you will, that if you have access to MyCSF, you can build the assessment object and just start to work through it. And then you can have an insight report generated based off of that. So different tools for different, types of folks out there. I wanted to add that in just because I think it's important to delineate between the two and understand that they apply to different types of people, organizations, and how they're using AI. But let's jump into some of the questions. So the first question that came in, did HITRUST decide on the AI security controls on their own? So the answer is, like any good security professional, kind of. So what we did was in 2023, we stood up an AI working group, and that working group consisted of uh, like very large organizations of different industries or cross industry. Think the Microsofts of the world, the AWSs of the world, and others. And we worked over a 12-month period. I think it actually was more like 15 months, trying to develop what does this AI security assessment and certification look like. And there was a lot of inputs that went into that working group, other standards, think about OWASP as one example. But it was really that working group that came together, that cross-industry working group that came together and said, hey, here are the 44 things that we think are the absolute critical controls to wrap around any AI system. And what we did after that is we actually published those controls out to the world and asked for feedback. And we got a ton of feedback. I mean, across the globe, people were chiming in and say, oh, well, we really like this, but you missed this, or you need to tweak this control this way. And after that comment period, we took all of that feedback, we incorporated it into the standard, and then we published the standard. So I want to point that out because this was really a community effort. It was a village that came together and decided on these controls being the ones that matter. So thanks for that question. What is the next one? Why did HITRUST decide to make an AI certification that's separate from their other certification offerings? So Joe touched on this. The only thing I guess I want to point out is you have to build the AI assessment on top of one of HITRUST's existing certification assessments, E1I under R2, but the outputs of those two assessments are separate. So you can not get certified on one and be certified on the other. So let's say you're not really mature on the AI side and you don't reach the certification bar for AI. That doesn't mean you won't get E1 certified. If you're mature for your traditional security controls, infrastructure, all that stuff, then you'll still receive the E1 certification. So there is even though they're tied together, there is a separation on the outputs. Let's see. Are all of the AI certification controls created equally? Joe, you want to take this one, or you want me to jump in?
Yeah, I tell you what, I'll start it off and then you can take it from there. I think it was helpful to hear from how HITRUST utilized that working group to get together the best set of AI controls or requirements that be representative of a good program. When I look at how those stack up, the two topics that boil right up to the top are change management, making sure you're changing the AI agents or AI agent classes in a way that's structured similarly to like how you migrate changes to a production system. And then, of course, access management, making sure only the right people have access to the AI tool and data, making sure the AI agent itself only has the right access to support data and reference data, and that someone's accountable for it. So access management and change management are the two topics I see represented in the HITRUST testing the most. Certainly that idea of having model cards where there's a human that's liable or responsible for the result or what happens, that's certainly important as well. Although I see that with just a few requirements here, whereas access management and AI change management have multiple requirements that are detailed and really need to be managed as part of that cert.
Lenny, any thoughts, anything to add?
Governance, governance, governance. Honestly,
I
no, I
love
say
that.
that because I can't restate the importance of outlining responsibilities of who's responsible for oversight, who's responsible for security, who's responsible for the risks at the end of the day. So, not that that is a part of the control set, if you will, but it's just kind of at the top of my mind and something that I feel like should be kept in the forefront as you're going through and assessing your AI security and risks.
All great points, and I'm gonna talk about it through the lens of high trust and understand that the AI security experts who have just spoken are going to focus your attention. From a high trust perspective, there's no control in the security certification that is more important than the other in order to get certified, right? So, um, unlike the R2, where there are a subset of controls that are required for certification, right now for the AI cert, there isn't one. So you have to be mature against all of them. But I want to, foot stomp and pound my hands to reiterate what Joe and Lenise mentioned. There are probably some controls that you want to focus on just proactively and make sure that they're in place, they're implemented, and they're operating the way that they're supposed to operate. What I think you're going to see over time, though, is high trust today for our E1, I1, and R2. We ingest threat data on a quarterly basis, and we analyze that, basically bouncing it off the MITRE ATT&CK framework to identify, hey, are our controls actually protecting against the threats that are happening today?
Hmm.
We are going to likely expand that into the AI security cert. So as we start to gain better visibility into how AI models are being exploited, you may see us make changes and we could prioritize. And again, I am completely speaking out of turn. This is all just conceptual. This is not,
We're going to hold you to this. This is a full commitment, okay?
I'm glad this is not being recorded because I'll get beat up. Um,
Ryan, maybe seriously though, maybe you can talk about potentially if the inheritance model is anywhere in the future. We talked about provide like AI providers and cloud hosting providers being some of the first ones to do AI compliance and AI security adoption, such as a high trust cert. But in the future, in future years, maybe even as early as next year, do you foresee that companies will be able to inherit some of the testing of controls from the providers in the way that they do today on normal validated?
Yeah, for sure. So that is already like ready to happen.
That's
So if you
happening,
think,
huh?
yeah, so ultimately the reason why it's not available today is we only released this assessment in December of 2024. So it's only 3 months old
Hot
and
off the press. Oh
hot
yeah.
off the press. So the big providers out there, the Microsofts, the GCPs, the AWSs, the others of the world, they're doing readiness right now, and they're working to get certified. Once they're certified, those assessments will be published for
Nice.
inheritance. And if you are building on top of that, right, because there is this element of, all right, I'm using, and I'll make it up, Copilot, but I'm building my own models that then I can then sell to someone else. Well, now you've just become
Custom agents. That's right.
right. You've just become a provider just like Microsoft. So being able to inherit all the stuff that they control and then being assessed against what you own, that same concept will work for AI in the future. I think you'll probably, fingers crossed, start to see some of that inheritance be made available later this year.
Awesome. Awesome.
Okay, let me see where we left off. We got a question. This seems to be a very mature method to treat AI specific security risks. What tips do you have for those who may just be starting their AI POC or implementation? And I think that dovetails perfectly with another question that says, is there an AI readiness option? So, Joe or Lenise, you want to take that one?
Lenice, go ahead. Lenice is the advisory expert. Feel free to pass to me if you like.
No, no worries. Thanks, Joe. So yeah, there is currently a readiness option, right? So in the same respect where you'd go into my CSF and create your readiness object, In a non-AI assessment, you do this in the same way. You pull in the factor that Joe showed on screen, and you can start to walk through a readiness assessment, um,
Nice.
kind of in the same way you would your normal assessment.
Does that give full visibility, Lenise? Can you go through each of the requirements, together like ahead of an assessment? Is that the way that works?
Indeed, yeah, it's almost like you're going through a mock validated assessment, right? Where you're testing your controls in the same ways as you would during your validated time period.
Interesting. All right. I'm sure that could be helpful for an organization that is new to this, just like everyone is new to this. Well, maybe you're one of the organizations that has been forward thinking and really gotten into some of these controls or requirements, but there may be many organizations out there that are thinking to themselves, well, what's the first step if we haven't gotten that detail? What if we haven't gotten into that level of granular security or AI system implementations yet? Maybe a readiness could make sense, so they can be proactive on building in those controls into the AI agent systems as they roll them out. That may be something that works better than trying to be reactive later on.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head, Joe. And that was going to be my comments. But to follow up or to add to yours, and may sound like a shameless plug, but if you're going to do readiness, don't go it alone. If you have the capability, bring on a partner like Coalfire to help you through this process. They're doing these
Yep,
things for other uh, entities that maybe your peers, maybe they're in other industries. They're seeing lots of different looks at this, and they're going to be able to help you leverage reality on the way that you're looking at it. I always have said this for
absolutely.
years. You know, the people are usually married to their environments, and it's really hard to kind of wade through the noise of being in it every single day. And someone like Coalfire may come in and call your baby ugly, but there's
Well, we'll be a little more gentle than that. Okay. Well,
obviously
slightly,
that's what I
but
did. That's
we
what I
are
did before. Yeah.
doing,
So
yeah, we're doing this work right now, and some of that familiarity may be helpful just to kind of share in those early stages. So, to your point.
yeah, absolutely. All right. So next question is, and I'm so glad these are coming in fast and furious at this point. After an AI integration machine learning solution such as Sentinel-1 from an EDR prospect or vulnerability scanning solution such as Tenable or Qualys, these providers will need to go after the AI cert assessment, and then the client using these can inherit or what specific clients want to certify under new AI risk assessment if they solely integrate other systems that address the AI components for the overall system. So if I'm understanding correctly, we brought in a whole bunch of different AI tools. And in theory, those providers, those implementers of AI have already been certified and have made their assessments available for certification. I'm sorry, for inheritance. So if someone who has pulled in all of these tools and has made an overall system, can they then get that overall system certified leveraging inheritance? And I don't know if either one of you have really strong opinions on this. This sounds like something I've harped on for 10 or more years. Scope means everything.
Right.
And
Secondary scope. Yeah. Tools being included in the assessment that are leveraged need to be secure. So whether you're scoping in certain applications that you choose, making sure boundaries are drawn around where all the PHI data is, I think having these tools that are already called, like having antivirus that's called in domain 2 or having network monitoring that's called in domain 8. I think the HITRUST handbook did a really nice job of making it really clear that secondary scoping components are very much a part of the assessment and need to be evaluated, or the testing needs to be inherited. So I
yeah,
would say yes.
so for the individual that posed this question, if this is reality today, reach out to Lenise, Joe, and I, because I think we probably need to chat through the specific details to ascertain, what's certifiable, what's not, so on and so forth. So
Exactly.
there's a ton to peel back on this, and we wouldn't be doing your question justice by just answering it here without learning more. Okay. I think we may be at the last question. So if you have any burning questions in your mind, please get them into the chat box. How do we learn more about the details of the specific controls that you define in the collaboration with key industry players? So the answer is, I just put it into the chat box. Here is
There you go.
a publicly facing website
Great
where
resource.
it explains from A to Z and beyond what the AI cert looks like. It also contains each one of the controls in it and the elements within those controls. So if you have been around the HITRUST world for any period of time, you will know that we are very protective of our control language. This is the first time we've ever made them public. So please use this as a resource, dig into it. And if you have feedback, reach out to me. I will get with the really big brained people we keep locked in a room here at HITRUST to provide that feedback, because we are constantly maintaining our framework and these assessments. So your feedback may get into the future. So if there's any issues opening that link, let me know, email me. I will put my email in the chat, and I suggest Joe and Lenise, maybe you do the same thing, because I don't think it's on the next slide. Feel free to reach out to me. All right. Next question. Are there any plans to include some AI requirements in the R2, I1, or E1 baselines, or any guidance on scoping and assessment that includes AI services but without the AI cert or risk factor? So I don't believe there's any plans to include AI controls in the standard assessment baselines. The idea is that you add these on. As far as the second question, scoping and assessment that includes AI. If you don't want to add it on, so to reiterate the second part of the question, any guidance on scoping and assessment that includes AI services but without the AI cert or AI risk management assessments. Again, I'll open it up to Joe and Lenise if they have any thoughts, but you would have to do it outside the HITRUST assessment. If you don't want to add it to the assessment, then you're going to have to do it through some kind of spreadsheet questionnaire. It's going to be a very manual process. I don't know, Joe or Lenise, any thoughts?
We've been focused on clients that are either going through a HITRUST assessment at the time or have a certification that's valid and that's been performed recently. If the assessment is actually going on or coming up soon in the future, you can tack it right on. That's the smoothest way to do it. I know Lenise has a ton of amazing resources to help clients get ready for that and feel like they're ready. Also, the one other option that's not quite as convenient, but certainly the Coalfire team can make it happen, is if you're a company that received a HITRUST certification in the past 1 to 2 years, let's say you're I1 certified, or if you have an R2 certification that's out there, you can go into the MyCSF, and assuming you have an empty spot for an additional assessment object, what you can do is you can stand up an additional object and then inherit from your current cert. So we do focus on active certifications and companies that have a cert already in place. I think outside of that would be working with the advisory or the prep team to make sure they're looking forward towards wrapping that into a HITRUST effort.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Lenise. I'm sorry.
No worries. Outside of that, right, incorporating it into a readiness assessment is going to be very valuable, right, where you get the opportunity to assess those controls kind of ahead of the game. I've seen it approached in a different way, right? I've seen it approached in scoping the AI factor into a validated assessment itself, and then utilizing that as a readiness. Because the AI factor comes, or the AI certification is separate, it creates kind of a low stakes way for you to assess your
That's
AI
right.
controls without having kind of to have to air any dirty laundry, so to speak, when it comes time to share that certification with clients and regulators. So, kind of recommend keeping it within the MyCSF tool.
Yeah, you said exactly what I was going to say.
Mhm.
So we were mentally there. All
Yes.
right, next question. How long is Joe going to do his interpretive dance? Joe?
Until it starts raining. I don't know. We'll see. Mother Nature will tell. No, I think we have maybe one or two more questions here.
We do.
Um, I think
So
there's a question here clarifying provider versus user in terms of AI services being out there. Yeah, I know we touched on that quickly, but I don't know. Maybe Lanice, do you have any thoughts for Charlie here in terms of putting together systems and looking kind of like what pieces, like as part of the advisory program, do you help clients understand what they are personally responsible for? Is that and what they can leverage? Is that part of it?
Yeah, and I think the question is kind of coming down to, right, we're AI is used as such a broad term, right? So we've got AI in use as a deployment or a developer of AI, but then we've also, as organizations, are utilizing AI to assist us in our day-to-day work, right? So your AI risk assessment, right, the security risk assessment is really going to be the tool that's going to help an organization that's utilizing AI as a tool, right, in your day-to-day life and what type of risk that brings into your organization, right? And so it's on the certification side where you're really looking at as a deployer of an AI system, right? How you're creating and how you're training and how you're developing your models. That's going to be more appropriate would be the certification, right? So honestly, both of them would kind of apply to
Both.
a company that's
Both.
utilizing or that's
Interesting.
deploying AI. But yeah, I would say that's kind of where I see the separation. If that answers your question, Charlie.
that's how I read the question. So the last two questions are kind of tied together. Will we be setting out the recording link and are we sending out the deck? The answer to that question is yes to both. So I don't see any additional questions coming in. Joe or Lanice, any final thoughts?
No, I would just thank everyone who joined the webinar today. Obviously, working on anything new is exciting and a little bit scary for some people, and it's unfamiliar, but it's so important to be proactive. Like I said, the industry as a whole being proactive to prevent that kind of big AI breach, I think, is a huge value to all of us. So, trust leaning into the AI compliance realm is definitely a huge value to the industry from what I see. And the Coalfire team is excited. It's a new topic. It's new work. It's a new realm. I know. Lanice, what do you see?
Hey, ditto. In addition to all that, but absolutely right. So Coalfire is here to just answer any questions you might have. Feel free to reach out and pick our brains about this. We're happy to
Coalfire's
help.
here to help.
Yeah.
Yep, that's right.
Well, thanks so much. Thanks for joining, everybody. Thank you to Lanice and Joe. Follow us on LinkedIn. We're talking about this stuff every single day. Find me out there. Next time, I will put a QR code on the slide so you can just scan it like an actual technology company. And have a great rest of your week, everybody. Thanks so much.